Are we on? Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the May 19th City Council meeting to order. Please call the roll.
Deckent,
Here.
Inskeep,
Here.
Daveline,
Here.
Soldner, here, Pyros de Carvalho.
Here.
Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Today's prayer will be given by Gary Getting of Hutchinson Friends Church. Thank you, Gary.
You're welcome. Shall we pray? Our gracious Heavenly Father, may we be mindful of all the many blessings that you've given to us. Today especially, we're grateful for this community in which we live and for these who serve us here in this chamber and throughout our community as well. Just may your kind and watchful care be with each of us through this day, I pray. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
We have one proclamation today, so if I could have Liberty Thompson join me at the podium for a proclamation for drug court. I always forget to sign these before I give them, so I'm going to sign it now so I don't give you a blank one. Whereas, over the past 25 years, drug courts have served over 1.4 million individuals, and whereas drug courts are now recognized as the most successful criminal justice intervention in our nation's history, and 75% of drug court graduates will never see another pair of handcuffs, and whereas drug courts save up to $27 for every $1 invested and produce up to $13,000 for every individual they serve, and whereas drug courts significantly improve substance abuse treatment outcomes, substantially reduce drug abuse and crime, and do so at less expense than any other justice strategy, and whereas drug courts facilitate community-wide partnerships bringing together public safety and public health professionals in the fight against drug abuse and criminality, and whereas there are now 2,966 drug courts nationwide, and drug courts are the cornerstone of criminal justice reform sweeping the nation, and whereas drug courts demonstrate that when one person rises out of drugs and crime, we all rise, and the time has come to put a drug court within reach of every eligible person in need. Now, therefore, I, Jade Pyros de Carvalho, Mayor of the City of Hutchinson, Kansas, do hereby proclaim the month of May 2015 as National Drug Court Month in the City of Hutchinson. Would you like to say a few words?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mayor and City Council members. I'm Liberty Thompson. I am the coordinator of Reno County Drug Court. And drug courts help prison-bound, addicted people gain treatment rather than prison. We know that prison does not cure addiction, only treatment does. And so drug courts help to facilitate the rehabilitation process rather than to put people who are addicted in prison. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next item, please.
Item 5A, summary of the 2015 citywide spring cleanup.
Good morning, Council. I'm Justin LaFountain. I'm Associate Planner with the Planning Department. I just wanted to report a bit on the 2015 spring cleanup. It happened the last weekend in April this year. It was very successful. This year we raised, or I should say collected, 185.4 tons of waste. And of those tons, 4.25 were electronic waste that tech collected, over 9,000 pounds there. I just wanted to share a few pictures. Basically over the weekend, myself and 4 Public Works employees were going around helping people load trash in and just really trying to get the city cleaned up. This is from Tech. They were very thrilled with the collection they had there. Like I said, 4.25 tons collected at Tech. As you can see, last year we had collected 145 tons, and this year all the way up to 185 tons. So it's about 40 more tons than last year. And I really just wanted to thank Dennis, Steve, Todd, and Jose with the Public Works Department. This would not have been possible without them. They were incredibly helpful throughout and always willing to help the citizens. So just wanted to thank them. That's all I had. If you have any questions. Or
I want to know which of those pieces of equipment you were driving.
I wasn't driving any, unfortunately. Those were driven by the Public Works guys. So.
Thank you so much, Justin. I
No
know we've
problem.
had a lot of requests for that electronic waste pickup, so I'm glad we were able to provide that.
Absolutely.
Next item, please.
Item 5B, Sports Arena Project Update.
Good morning, Council and Mayor. I'm Ron Sellers, 3400 Thunderbird. I'd like to make a short report to the Council this morning of the Sports Arena Building Committee. The Building Committee met on 4/30/15. We had about a 3.5-hour meeting. All members of the appointed committee by you were present, that being Daryl Pankratz, John Daveline, Cindy Proett, myself, Bob Fee, Richard Gray, Steve Drock. Ex officio members John Deerdoff, Carter File, Justin Combs, Merrill Dye. We had 5 architects with us: Chris Kostelik, Lee Sterrett, Brent Ross from Denver, and Shannon Bohm and Gary Holler from our Wichita firm. I was elected chairman. I'm proud to be chairman of the Sports Arena Building Committee because I think the committee, the city, the college, the architects, and whoever we hire to construct the facility will build a wonderful building for this future of Hutchinson. We anticipate a very involved committee, and thank you for your appointment to same. Significant time was spent going over community input that was received during the election period. We made a list of items. It was a very extensive list. The architects have that in their possession at this point in time for consideration. I think we should also say that the architects fully understand the desire for extensive community use of the renovated sports arena, as well as an outstanding location for HCC athletics. We suggested to the voters that this could be refurbished such that the community would have additional access to the venue, and I think the architects fully understand our intent. As you recall, I believe it was your last meeting or 2 meetings ago, you allowed the Sports Arena Committee to look at using a construction manager at risk. John Deerdoff's staff has been very active in this process, and on May 4th sent out a request for applications for construction managers at risk to make applications. Those were due last Friday, the 15th, and 6 were received.
Wow.
from 4 Wichita companies and 2 Kansas City companies, all very well-known construction management firms. Those are being reviewed by a subcommittee, John Daveline on the City Council, John Deerdoff, Carter File, myself, Justin Combs, and 2 of our architects. We will be meeting tomorrow to narrow this group down to 3 to 4 from the 6 that will make in-person interviews, and that will be done with the full committee, the full building committee, on June 4th. After that point in time, it's possible that we will be making a recommendation to you, the City Council, for an approval of a construction manager at risk to work closely with our architects from almost day one of this project. Public input and stockholder meetings will be held prior to the end of the schematic design phase. John, have I missed anything?
I think you covered it very well.
Okay. Are there any questions of the council, of the committee at this point? If not, I do have, I don't believe in those computers that you've got in front of you, so I've got some hard copies for your use.
For those of you who
And,
don't know, Ron used to make the council packet be printed out for him. It's not a fan
Ron?
of
It was
technology.
well read that
Ron?
way.
Question.
I do have one question. I remember part of the discussion a couple of weeks ago.
Thank you. Do we not have enough?
Indicating that expecting things to be learned about corrections, not corrections. My past is popping in. Construction management at risk. I'm curious, have there been some kind of insights or already just thus far in the process that you've picked up on?
Let me touch, and then John, if you'll help answer this question. The $29 million sports arena project is a very, very complicated endeavor. It is generally felt by those people that work a lot with construction projects that construction management at risk is a positive thing at this point in time, because it puts a contractor with the architect during the architect's initial planning stages, schematic stages, print stages, and they actually work with the architect to value engineer something so that we don't go out to bid with a $40 million project and then we say, well, what are we going to do? The project, this is being used presently in Hutchinson at the jail project. The county, I think we could say, is very, very pleased with what happened there. This was also used on a recent 308 bond issue. And in that particular case, Councilman Duggan, that the bids came in way too high and 308 had a real problem, and they went to a construction management firm and were able to work with them and get the costs within the range of the budget and the allowable expenses. So there's two local things that have happened recently that show positive results of construction management at risk. John?
I would just add our lengthy meeting, we spent a good deal of that just on the whole concept and getting, committee members familiar with it. The architect team, the Wichita, the Denver firm, both had experience with this and shared some of their thoughts. And so I think the committee through that discussion got more comfortable with the whole process, and we'll learn even more, I think, as we go through the interview process and then be ready to hopefully make a building committee recommendation to the council later in June.
And you mentioned that the public input phase would happen prior to schematic design phase. When do you anticipate that happening? End of
I
summer?
think in the latter part of June.
Yes.
Okay.
We're wanting this to move ahead as quickly as possible, but we think that they need to get a little bit further. There was some significant changes requested by the committee in things that have come up through the election process. Good ideas from the citizens of Hutchinson that need to be considered, and particularly in the additional use by the general public of the sports arena. And so you're going to see a little different schematic coming back to you. John, you were involved.
No, you're doing fine.
So if I understand correctly, so when the school board, they started out a conventional bid process and changed to the construction management process. Okay.
Right.
And it worked out quite well for them. They were very, very pleased with it, and it came in under budget, I believe. We will be making periodic reports to you. Certainly there's things that we need your approval, and we'll come for those things. But in addition to that, we'll be making reports to you so that you're updated. We want the community to know what's going on this significant construction project for the future of Hutchinson.
Thank you, Ron.
Thanks for your
Thank you.
service.
Thank you.
Next item, please.
Item 5C, oral communications from the audience.
This is the section of the meeting where we allow communications from the audience on items that are not on the agenda. If you'd like to address the council on any item, please make your way to the podium, state your name and address, and limit your comments to no more than 5 minutes. Please.
Morning.
Good
My
morning.
name is Michael Keene. I live at 100 block of East 14th. I was here last June. Brought some problems to your attention. I hate to say there's been nothing done, and I've brought some paperwork to back up what I'm telling you if I can.
Oh, please do.
I have to apologize. I thought there were just 4 members, and so I just made 4 copies. If you notice at the top of the first handout, this process was started by my neighbors in 2004. What happened is the city replaced approximately 20 feet of the, not the curbing, but the guttering, and they sloped it the wrong direction. We had to, I didn't, the neighbors had the department head out, and he said this street drains to the west. It does not drain to the west, it drains to the east. It was a mistake, I understand that. We were basically put on the list at that time, and that was in 2004. Last summer when I was here, we brought it to your attention. They sent the surveyors out. I got a letter this time basically saying we'll put you on the list. They've never admitted they made a mistake, just being put on the list again. In my opinion, as a result of this, I retired from the state, and I should have learned that if you go over a department head's head, there's going to be retaliation. Immediately after I was here last summer, they stopped grading our alley. And I was told by the forestry man, the city of Hutchinson has no authority in the alleys. In my opinion, that's city property. The trees are going to grow over. If I put a garage in the alley, I'm sure the city's not going to allow that. So I believe that the city does have some authority in the alleys. The last problem, I thought I was doing the folks a favor. On the alley coming out of Westlake over to Walnut, there's a huge tree. I mean, it's big, and it's on city right-of-way, and it's splitting down the trunk clear to the ground, and it's going to fall. The city sent the forestry expert, I was told, out. They looked at it and said, yes, it's going to fall, but it's not going to hit the power lines. Well, in my opinion, I thought I was just letting you folks know we had a problem. If this thing falls, I would think there'd be some liability there on the city's part since they were notified there's a problem. It doesn't affect me because that's not my block, but I'm afraid somebody's going to get hurt. I mean, you can stick your hand in the tree, it's that close to falling. That's all I've got. My main pain today is our alley is horrible. It hasn't been graded in over a year. I don't know if they've suspended that operation to save on budgets. I don't know why, because they will not return my calls. That's very unprofessional. Even the neighbor lady has called. They won't return her call. If they would just tell us that they're not going to do it anymore. I've lived on that block for 31 years, and once or twice a year somebody calls and they come out and blade our alley. But it's to the point now it needs graded, and it needs not sand but some gravel, but something. Most of the houses on that block, the garages are on the alley, so it's a very heavily used alley, plus people coming out of Westlake go across Walnut and right up our alley. It's very heavily traveled, and it's a mess. And it's not just a mess because it's been raining, it's a mess from neglect. And I hate to say begging, but I need somebody to do something with our alley.
Well, I do apologize about the lack of response to your service request, but John, maybe you could comment on the policy about the alleys. I wasn't aware one way or the other do we typically grade those, or is there anybody from
Yeah, we do.
streets
Yeah,
that
we
would know
do.
that? We do?
Yeah, I'm not aware of any of what he's talked about, and
Okay.
we'll look into it. I think we're typically pretty good at responding, so I'm not sure what the communication link's been, but don't want to really say
And
a
they
whole lot
always
more
have
until I
been
know.
good,
Yeah.
and I appreciate that. I call in or somebody calls in, and within 2 or 3 days they're out blading it, but since I was here last, they won't respond to anybody. At least return our calls.
Well, Mr. Keene, why don't I go ahead and ask that they follow up and then maybe follow up with me within 2 weeks about whether or not they followed up with you, and I can give you my email directly, or do you use email?
No,
Okay.
I'm an old man. I don't do computers.
Well, my phone number is also on the city website if you'd like to call and chat with me in a few weeks to see if this has been looked
Okay.
into.
Just, I'm begging to do something. We've got a mess.
Well, we will certainly do what we can, and I apologize for any inconvenience.
Okay,
Well, thank you for coming to
thank you.
chat with us
Thank you.
today.
Mike, good to see you.
Hi, Steve.
Is there anyone else who would like to address the council today? Hearing none, please call the next item.
Items 6A through E, consent agenda.
I move we approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Deckent,
Yes?
Inskeep,
Yes.
Dave Line,
Yes.
Soldner,
Yes.
Tyros de Carvalho.
Yes, next item, please.
Item 7A, consider resolution in support of Amtrak Tiger Grant.
Madam Mayor and Council, over the past 3, maybe 4 years, the city of Hutchinson, along with some other Kansas communities and communities in Colorado and New Mexico, have been working to really secure the future of Amtrak on its current Southwest Chief route. And the issue began with the condition of track along that route, and really ended up reducing speeds for Amtrak. And this all led to the potential for Amtrak to reroute and use the transcontinental route, which would be from Newton south and around, and basically end Amtrak service to 4 Kansas communities, several in Colorado and in New Mexico as well. So we formed a coalition of cities along this route to begin discussing how we might help change directions of this and, again, secure the future of Amtrak for our communities. And so the coalition was formed, and Newton, Hutchinson, Garden City, Dodge City, BNSF was at the table with us, as well as Amtrak and Kansas Department of Transportation. And our first formal effort as a group was to commit funds to help hire a Washington, D.C. lobbyist, which I guess we all have to do from time to time, to help us guide us through this process, how we might be able to secure funds and support for improving the track conditions. That led to our first effort, where we applied for a Tiger Grant in 2013, federal funding for this project, which wasn't approved. We followed that up again in 2014 with another grant application, and that was approved. And we received $12.4 million from the federal government and $9.3 million from matching funds. And that was made up of dollars committed from KDOT, dollars committed from Amtrak, which was the biggest portion of that. The other small portion was $50,000, which was a commitment from the 4 Kansas communities, Newton, Hutchinson, Dodge City, and Garden City, at $12,500 per. So the next step now is that we're addressing some of the track conditions in the Colorado, New Mexico area. The city of La Junta, Colorado is the sponsoring the grant and submitting another Tiger Grant 7 for additional funds. And we're being asked as a coalition to provide some additional matching funds for their grant application, again at the $12,500 level per communities, and the Kansas group would be another $50,000 from us, and then La Junta, host of Colorado cities and New Mexico cities are trying to secure some match dollars for their communities. And so today, what the council's being asked to do is approve this resolution of support for the grant, and also committing a match of $12,500. And again, the $12,500 would not be paid if the grant is not successful. But it's really been early on in this process, I really thought it was going to be a real difficult challenge to be able to secure funding, and that Tiger Grant was a big step, because it does show a lot of people involved in this process that there is a commitment to that. And you know, the BNSF, obviously they're moving freight on this route, and so speed is not a big issue to them. Amtrak, and some of us participated in a tour along that route out to Colorado, and basically, there's certain portions of the track where they'll slow down to 45 or 50, and then quickly you're up to the typical 90 mile or whatever. It's when you're on the train and the cars on the highway are passing you, it seemed a little bit strange that that was happening. So there definitely are those conditions, but I think a lot of progress has been made. So be happy to answer any questions. There's been, again, a lot of history to getting us to this point today, and people often ask, how many people use Amtrak, and roughly we're in the 5,200 on and offs basically in an annual, and it fluctuates. In Hutchinson, yeah. And Garden City has a few more out there. I've got a list of the ons and offs. So anyway, but with that, I'd be happy to address any more questions that you might have.
I had one. This one, is this particular to Colorado? Will there be a future one potentially for New Mexico?
No, this will be for that connection, Colorado, New Mexico. Essentially, it trying to get to the Albuquerque area, basically, because that's where the transcontinental from Newton south would eventually wrap up into Albuquerque. And I think there's a map in there that shows that connection. So it would be for those that part of the route.
John, has any of the work begun on the Tiger 6 grant in Kansas?
Do not believe so, and I don't know for certain, but I do not believe so, because I think there's still an effort to secure the additional funding to make those total improvements, because really the Tiger grant plus the other commitments probably isn't enough to address the total situation, and so it's going to have to be done in phases. From the outset, there was an initial $100 million targeted for initial immediate improvements, $100 million, and then $10 million annually for upgrade and maintenance down the road, and certainly we're far from the $100 million area. So a lot more discussions with Amtrak and BNSF to be probably bigger partners in this effort.
Well, given the current political climate toward Amtrak, I'm not overly optimistic, but I do think we need to support the effort that's been made.
I'd agree.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a motion or further discussion?
I will move to approve the resolution and commitment of $12,500 for disbursement only if the Tiger 7 grant for improvements to the Southwest Chief Passenger Line in Colorado is approved for funding.
Second.
Motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Deckett,
Yes.
Inskeep,
Yes.
Dayline,
Yes.
Soldner,
Yes.
Tyros de Cavallo.
Yes.
Item 7B, consider ordinance relating to public art.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. I'm Merrill Dye, the Assistant City Manager. On March 3rd of this year, a group of citizens named the Citizens Collective for Creative Placemaking presented to the City Council a proposal to implement a public art program that would fall under the city's umbrella. The proposal called for the establishment of a public art trust fund authorized by the adoption of an ordinance that would require a % for public art to be allocated from the funds for eligible capital improvement projects. The funds would be used to create and guide the development of a public art collection, long-term maintenance and conservation, and public education. And the ordinance would also establish a public art design council to be appointed by the mayor and council, city council, to design or to oversee the public art program and work with staff. Following the presentation, the city council accepted the proposal from the Citizens Collective and directed staff to prepare an ordinance that, number one, would establish a public art program operated by the city. 2, establish a public art trust fund to be funded through a % for public art allocation from eligible capital improvement projects. 3, establish a public art design council to be appointed by the mayor and city council. And 4, designate city staff to support the design council. Since that time, city staff has reviewed a draft ordinance, and city staff included John Deardoff, Paul Brown, Janet McKieran, Justin Combs, Jim Sightnader, and myself. And what I'd like to do is just kind of step us through that ordinance for the benefit of the public to understand the various components. And then following that, I would like to share a PowerPoint with you that gives you kind of a conceptual understanding of how this process would probably work. It was good advice from Paul Brown that the ordinance basically is a brief document. May not appear too brief to you right now, but the guidelines and the structure, the framework for that is something that the design council would come up with in order to make this program work, and certainly that would be a much longer and more involved document. So in addition to laying out the purpose and the policy, which I don't want to reiterate what I've already said, but it establishes a public art program under the city's umbrella. And this would be a percent for art program. Again, the mayor appoints the Public Art Design Council. The program focuses on the outside and inside of new and remodeled city-owned public spaces. It requires 1% of eligible construction costs to be allocated for public art involving CIP projects that are paid wholly or in part by the city for improvements to or new construction of a building or structure, streetscape, pedestrian mall or plaza, park, trail, or other project or any portion thereof, which includes finished space for human occupancy and will be available for public view. No less than 80% of the 1% will be used for on-site artwork. No more than 20% will be deposited in a public art trust fund to be used for additional projects and maintenance of the existing works. And where a CIP project is less than $75,000, at the discretion of the Public Art Design Council, the project, if the project does not lend itself to public art, then 100% of the 1% can be deposited to the Public Art Trust Fund. There are certain types of projects that would be exempt from the percent for art requirement. That includes water projects, stormwater, wastewater facilities, street construction and repair, right-of-way improvements, and maintenance projects. A department could still recommend 1% be applied to a project, but it would be something that the design council and eventually the city council would have to determine. The ordinance sets out a long list of definitions that are used within the ordinance. The Public Art Design Council would be made up of 7 people, selected because of their expertise in visual arts, architecture, historical preservation, or their affiliation with local business or a public entity. Terms would be for 3 years, but we would suggest staggered terms to start with so that you have that continuity over time. Ex officio members would have unlimited terms and voting privileges, and that would include the directors of parks, downtown development, planning and development, and our Arts and Humanities Council. The ordinance also sets out the duties and responsibilities of the Public Art Design Council and a procedure for commissioning public art projects. Eligible expenses are also identified in the ordinance. And those items that would be ineligible for the 1% are also spelled out in detail. Again, it sets out a process for selecting artworks that would be included and criteria for selecting a piece of art and the artist. The selection process that is set out in the ordinance involves one of three methods: open competition, limited or invitational competition, and direct purchase. It also sets out a requirement for a public art maintenance and a reserve for that. If we're going to add to the city's permanent collection, we need to be able to maintain it over time. And it provides that the monies for the maintenance would come through the Public Art Trust Fund, established at 20%, up to 20% of the initial 1%. It also provides a process for deaccessioning public art and requires the Public Art Design Council to come up with a specific listing of reasons for deaccessioning a piece of art, but it also says that those reasons shall include, but not be limited to, when artwork is damaged or deteriorated and repair is impractical or infeasible, artwork endangers public safety, and in the case of site-specific artwork, the artwork is destroyed by severely altering its relationship to the site, and artwork requires excessive maintenance or has faults or design workmanship. Again, the Design Council could add to that list as a reason and set out a process for deaccessioning public art. And if you just would bear with me for just a few minutes, I'd like to share with you this PowerPoint. Rather than presenting to you a set of guidelines in draft form, I thought I would share with you a PowerPoint to show you visually how this process could work. One of the first things that the Design Council would work on is this set of guidelines. As you can see, there are a lot of different partners in carrying out the public art program. We have consultants, artists, the community, and if you recall from the March 3rd discussion, that was an important piece that the council wanted to see included in this process as input from the community. You have the Design Council, also an interdepartmental team, and essentially that's staff who work with the city manager and the finance director in developing projects for the capital improvement program. The departments themselves that propose these projects, and then also a selection committee or a jury that oversees the project and assists in selecting the artist and the artwork. Next, I've just outlined those roles for each of the partners in this process. The program staff is really a position that is designated by the city manager. It's kind of a portable job that could move from person to person. I've also outlined the roles for the departments and the artists, the consultants. Once an artist is selected, then that individual would begin working with the consultants on a capital improvement project. The consultants being the architects, the engineers, or it could be other consultants down the road. The selection committee is a project-specific group. It would be comprised of the department representatives, the people who are actually assigned to that project, program staff person, a member, at least one or two members of the design council itself, the project professionals, again, your architects and your engineers, and the arts professionals that are involved as well. Actually, we could bring in other people who have an arts background to serve on that selection committee. And depending on the project, the selection committee could just become a jury. And that jury would help us decide the artist and the artwork that would be included. But the jury would not have oversight of the project from beginning to end as a selection committee would. The community is important in this process. This next slide shows what that staff person is going to be involved with. They are the liaison for the Public Art Design Council. They're going to work with the interdepartmental team and the selection committee. They're going to help manage all the consultants and volunteers in this entire process, assist the departments with their budget planning, and ensure that budget targets are met within the program.
Now, Meryl, just to clarify before moving on,
Mhm.
this is a position that already exists. Somebody will take this on at the city, and it won't be a significant percentage of their time.
Right now, that person is me in discussion with the city manager, John Darrell.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you. No, I'm excited to do this. The process is, again, this could change because we have a design council to put in place that's going to hammer all of this out, but essentially the budgets are developed. We identify the public art opportunities, come up with the project plans. We gather community input. There's a lot of different ways to involve the public in this process, and that could be done at different times, but the design council, based on the project that they're working on, could determine at what point the community engagement piece needs to be carried out. Project plans are reviewed. The committee, the selection committee is established for that project, or it could again be a jury if it's an open competition or an invitational competition. A call for artists is developed, and it's announced through an RFQ or RFP. And there are websites throughout the posts throughout the United States where these could be posted nationally. Americans for the Arts is a well-known website. Information meetings might need to be held for the artists so they know what they are actually responding to in the call for artists. Artist proposals are then received and evaluated according to selection criteria. And then the artist is recommended by the selection committee or the jury that goes to the design council, who makes that determination, and that contract with the artist comes back to the city council for final approval. So you will get an opportunity to see what is being recommended for that project. And then as the project is being built, we continue to be involved through project management and design and fabrication and integration of that artwork into the project and review and evaluation. I also put the selection criteria up here for you to understand that there are very specific guidelines in many or criteria that public art programs follow in determining public art. And I think that's important that we understand that just because we don't like it may not be a reason to reject it when it has met all of these criteria, because there's always going to be folks that are for it or against it, a particular piece of art. But it helps to have this criteria in place to evaluate the artist's work. The artistic quality, the appropriateness, the maintainability, public liability, the diversity, both in the medium and the scale of the art, and also of the artist's experience or heritage. feasibility, can they do this within time and budget that is allowed for the project? Can that artist work with all the different partners? Can they effectively communicate? And the originality of the artwork. Now, the funding mechanism for this, again, is a % for public art. And I've had a couple of discussions with our finance director, Frank Edwards, and also with city manager John Deardoff. And so working out the mechanics of that is very doable. There are over 400 of these public art programs in the nation. And so we won't be inventing the wheel, we'll just be trying to make the wheel fit for our organization. But right now, Frank and I still have some questions of how this will actually work, and we'll take that under consideration with our bond counsel and any others that we might need to consult. But we will make it work and make it work within state statute.
Now, Merrill, the capital improvement program varies in budget each year, but can you remind us, just for example, last year, what would 1% be?
I'd have to defer to Frank or to John for that.
It was, of course, that one year was very small. I mean, I think we only had like $600 and some thousand worth of projects, or it
So
wasn't a
60,000.
huge amount. Yeah, but it would vary.
6,000.
For example, the sports arena, if that were in play, that would be a bigger number for that project. Not in play, but we intend to. Well, I guess it depends on what you want to do, but we intend to incorporate art and whatever in that facility. So technically, I guess, is that project already underway? I guess that's a question that we can talk about later. So, but typically, it's not going to be a huge amount just based on our, projects that we do.
Merrill, I've got just a couple of questions. I know you're very excited about this, and we appreciate that very, very much. And I know it's not our role as a city council to get involved in the staffing levels, but I see an insurmountable amount of additional workload here. And I guess my questions are, at the outset and then going forward, can we really do this at a staff neutral level? Or can you agree or to accept this additional workload without, and it being revenue neutral in terms of additional staff? Those are my questions.
Well, Mr. Dayline, I have been living and breathing and eating
I know
public
you-
art
I
for
know
the
you
last
have. I know
4
you have.
years, lot longer.
Great.
And Mr. Deardoff and I have had this discussion on and off probably for the last 2, maybe 3 years about public art. So I kind of anticipated that, if I push this as a passion, it's going to come back to me. And yes, I think we can manage it. I think I can manage it with the help that we have in this organization. We have on the design council, again, Jim Seitnader, Jana McCarron, Justin Combs, and who am I missing? Mark Reset. And I think if we get this process down pat, that it'll just kind of run like a smooth machine. Not every year, as Mr. Deardoff pointed out, is going to present to us, a lot of projects to do. And then other years, for example, the sports arena, we might get a little
Right.
anxious about things, but I think that we just have to determine what our priorities are. And I think that I can manage to do that. If there's anybody that does project management in this organization, it's me.
Right.
And so I can organize the heck out of anything.
Yeah, very well. Yeah, unlike me.
All right, a
probably.
secondary question on the definition of public works projects. We have had discussions at the council level about a potential new fire station or stations. I guess my question is, if we were to build a new fire station, would this new ordinance require a 1% allocation for public art at a fire station? That's just one example.
Yes.
And it would, yes.
And that could be done in a number of ways. You know, again, the design council would take a look at that project and working with all the different partners that are involved, come up with what needs to happen in terms of public art at a fire station. Right now, we have public art at a fire station. We have a 9/11 memorial that our fire union was very much involved in. So it might just be, rather than something that's actually integrated into the design of the building itself, like a mosaic or a bas relief or whatever, it could be a statue. So we have to just look at what's doable and within the 1%.
I seem to recall in our conversation about this maybe last month that the definition was quite broad. It's not necessarily just statues, or that there are structures that can be put outside that maybe beautified that some would consider. I can't really recall the details of it, but that seemed very reasonable for what John is talking about. Maybe that's not the most obvious place to put public art, but some of the examples cited last time that would fall under the umbrella of this definition maybe would have been more obvious to include. I can't remember what those are, but I remember the definition of public art being broader than just statues necessarily.
Yes, it could be, as I mentioned, it could be mosaic, it could be bas relief, it could be concrete or steel, it could be, I'm not really finding the words I'm looking for, but it could be a lot of different media. It could be photography, it could be paintings, sculpture, it could be water features. It could be interactive art where the artist designs something that actually has a has a utility to it, has a function to it. But it according to the ordinance and then also the guidelines, it's the work of an artist, not the work of an architect or engineer or a landscape architect, because they are not artists. And so, if we allowed that kind of flexibility, then we're not going to end up with art in the public realm. We're going to end up with nice architecture, and we'd probably end up with that anyway.
I see.
I'm not sure if I answered
Yeah,
your question,
you did.
I'll follow up to John's question in a way. Could the council exempt a project from the 1%?
Exempt it?
Yes. I know there are exemptions built in, but let's say it's an applicable project. Could that choice be made as well?
It's your ordinance.
Okay. Okay. You mentioned there are 400 some public art councils or projects. How do those go about funding?
Many
generally?
of them are funded through a percent for public art program, which ranges anywhere from about 0.5% to the highest I've seen is about 2%. But then, public art programs may pull in funds from other sources as well. Some public art programs require a percent for art, for example, from developers. If they are building in their community, then they might require the developer. I don't suppose that would be politically palatable in our community. We're trying to make things as easy as we can for developers, and but some communities do that. There are also some grant sources out there. Thinking about the Art Place grant, which provides grant funds to projects from the range of $500,000 up to $2 million. For example, the city of Lawrence got a grant that I think was awarded in 2014 for $500,000 to develop a connecting link from a warehouse to its downtown, just kind of that corridor to include public art. So there are other foundations that provide grant sources, but before we chase after those funds, we need to have some very specific projects in place.
Will the downtown art program be rolled into this in any fashion, or will that stay a distinct, or any thoughts on that?
Well, you're talking about the sculpture walk?
Sculpture walk,
Yes, the sculpture walk program has been kind of a standalone. Just to give you a little background there, back in the days when we were building the streetscape, which was a multi-phase project, when Joe Plazio was city manager, I think he earmarked about $50,000 per phase for public art. And so it kind of collected over time, and some of it got spent on public art and some of it didn't. And so the sculpture walk group, if you will, came forward to the city council and asked that a portion of those funds be used to buy sculpture, the People's Choice Award, and then also for our installation costs related to that. And that's what those funds have been used for, not exclusively. Some of those funds were used for entertainment lights in the downtown, and I'm not sure what all, but the Sculpture Walk program is a partnership between the Downtown Hutchinson Revitalization Partnership, the Arts and Humanities Council, and the City of Hutchinson. And the sites where you see sculptures are sponsored by companies and individuals in our community. And so we get those donations to help cover some of our other program costs. But all of those sculptures are for sale. And we discount the price of the retail price of those sculptures if somebody wants to buy a piece and donate it to the city, or if they want to buy a piece and place it in some other public space of a public entity, for example, the college or the library, or as long as it's within the guidelines of that entity. We hope that program will continue and survive. Except for the public art funds that were earmarked for the streetscape, I suppose that program could continue using some of the funds from the Public Art Trust Fund, because it is for art programming. It's broad enough in this definition of the ordinance to continue that. But I would hope that we wouldn't alter the structure too much, because it's been a very successful program and a popular program. We probably could use a lot more sponsors to help prop it up, but we have not, other than buying the sculptures, we've not had to use the city's funds for, and we're authorized to spend up to $15,000 a year. We haven't really done that yet.
I might make one comment about the exemption idea, because that's something I kind of went over and back and forth in my head. Should council have the ability to just exempt a certain project? But I think as council, maybe not this council, but in general, we do have a tendency to create ordinances like that, and in my estimate, those aren't really ordinances, they're suggestions, if you allow for exemptions here and allow for exemptions there. And one example would be the complete street ordinance we passed, which has absolutely no teeth. Or passage of the International Property Maintenance Code on a complaint basis only. So I think it's a way of taking a stand without taking a stand. So if we're going to adopt the ordinance, adopt the ordinance. If we want to have the power to exempt properties willy-nilly, then maybe we don't need to adopt the ordinance. But it's probably best to take a stand, is my opinion.
Merrill, I'm certainly not opposed to this public art ordinance. I think the community's ready for it. But I'm trying to get my arms around this thing as far as kind of my thought process, because I obviously am fairly narrow in my appreciation for art. So, but I want to try to ask this fair question. Let's take the sports arena as an example. And if this ordinance were to pass, and that there would be 1% allocated in the form of some form of public art, and it would be a decision of whether to invest in the public art, or that portion could be used for a portion of a new scoreboard, how would that be evaluated?
Well, if there's art on the scoreboard, I think that would,
Okay,
that
all right,
would work.
Okay,
So-
good answer.
Get a good graphic designer.
Yeah, that's, I think it's a valid, it's a good question. And I think it kind of begs back to the question, is this ordinance important to the community? And if we exempt certain projects from time to time, then, it's really not an ordinance for, public art. Although the council, the council 5 years from now can get rid of this ordinance. I mean, it could happen by a simple vote of this council. So if you got to one of those projects, certainly you'd have the ability to deal with it at the time. You think about a $29 million project, there's going to be some pretty neat ways that I think that we would do anyway with the sports arena project that would comply with this. The Hall of Fame, I think of the logos and the paintings of the interior of the building, the floor. We've got a Hall of Fame floor that could be created. I think there's a lot of things that might have happened under the guise of that anyway, without saying you have to do it this way. It's not simply going to be, and I think the point that, because that's kind of my narrow, I'm like you, a little bit of a narrow mind on art, is that it's a statue. Everywhere there's going to be statues, and that's not really what this ordinance is all about. And certainly that's a component of that, but not too many of those projects that we're talking about sports arena come along. And we know, it's not like we're going to have one of those projects every year. More than likely, it's going to be the $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year type project that we'd be looking at. So I don't know if I answered your question, but certainly we would bring that component into the arena project, I think, even without having this so-called mandate.
Whether it's the sports arena or whatever the project size or scope, the art would be related to that project, correct?
Yes.
I mean, it wouldn't be someplace else in the city. It would be, if it's the sports arena, it's going to be there. If it's a fire station, it's going to be at the fire station. Is that
Well,
correct?
let me qualify that, yes. The ordinance provides that if a project is under $75,000 and doesn't really lend itself to public art, you can go into the Public Art Trust Fund, the full 1%. Let's take an example that I've used in my discussions with Frank. Let's say we're going to build a service barn at the zoo, and it's a $90,000 project. It's a building. It's over the $75,000, but why would we put public art in a service barn? So one thing we could do is earmark that money and pool it, keep it with the zoo. So down the road, if they're doing in addition to the visitor center, where it makes sense and it meets the thresholds, then that money could be pooled and used. As long as it's within the bond requirements and the bond itself is written broadly enough. I don't know. These are the kinds of things that we have to hammer out with our bond counsel. How do you get that 1% over here where it can be used again later and have a broader impact at a more accessible site in the public realm
But the intent is generally to have it associated with the project.
with the project, right?
Is there anyone in the audience who wanted to talk about this particular ordinance or express their opinion on it? I notice we have a few people who have contributed to conversation about this. No takers? Just here for moral support? Further questions or comments from the council? And if not, I'd entertain a motion on this item.
I'd move that we approve the ordinance chapter 30 as presented by staff.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Further discussion or questions? Please call the roll.
Deckent,
Yes.
Inskeep,
Yes.
Daveline,
Yes.
Soldner,
Yes.
Pyrus de Carvalho.
Yes. Next item, please.
Item 8A, consider appeal of Landmarks Commission decision.
Let the crowd settle down.
Just letting them exit.
Clear the room.
Well, good morning, City Council. I'm Jana McCarran, Director of Planning and Development. And the item before you today is 15 LMA 02. It's an appeal of a landmarks determination for window replacement at the property with the address of 700 to 702 East Avenue A. And here's a location map showing you where the property is located in respect to the Houston Whiteside District. So this is the Houston Whiteside National Historic District. I have a little more detail because we do have 2 new council members, and so bear with me. I want to give a little bit of history of the district and so forth. So as I mentioned, this is at the northeast corner of East Avenue A and North Cleveland Street. The district was created in 2004 and involved the consent of property owners who lived in the district at the time. Now, it wasn't like 100% consent. We have records. We received 3 dissenting votes, I believe, to the district being formed, but not everybody turned stuff in, returned a vote, so to speak. But by and large, the consent of the district was obtained prior to formation of the district. Also, the staff does try to make people who live in the district aware that they live in the district. We send mailings at least once a year. We have a design guideline booklet that I didn't bring a copy of it, but it's fairly large that we mail to all property owners in the district. We have had workshops and events, and the most recent event, which a couple of city council members were able to attend, was held on Sunday, which was a historic preservation celebration, and we had that in the district at the Houston Whiteside little pocket park. All the historic property owners in that district, as well as throughout the city, were invited to attend. Now, the national districts are on the National Register, and one question we get a lot is, well, why don't we just get rid of the district? We don't like it, it's too big, it's weird shape, why do we do it that way? So I just wanted to answer that question for all of you. We've checked with the state, we cannot get rid of it.
We cannot get rid of it.
So we're kind of stuck with the district. The only way to get rid of a National Historic District would be for more than 50% of the properties in the district to become non-contributing. And so over time, if the properties in the district were altered so that they were not contributing structures, or if there were to be, the Lord forbid, we wouldn't want this to happen, but some kind of a disaster that took out a bunch of the structures in the district, that's another way that a district can be delisted. Barring those 2 things happening, it's a district, and we are required by the state to follow the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation anytime somebody who lives in the district or owns property in that district wants to do a project. We have been trying to educate people, putting forth a little bit stronger effort to educate people that they live in the district. And then we also did put sign toppers out there recently. I don't know if you've had the chance to drive
Those are
through.
nice.
They're nice.
But they look a little small.
Small,
and
yeah.
The reason is because you can't make them bigger than the smallest name, and we have Ford and Plum. So if we had longer street names throughout the district, we'd have
Yeah.
bigger signs. But anyway, that's a little aside there. So let's go on to this particular case. This is the property in question where we have received the appeal. It's a duplex that's considered as a contributing structure. It's known as a Smith-Humphreys duplex, and it's a colonial revival style. It was built in approximately 1934, and I want to read to you the National Register description. It's a simple two-story side gable house with wood clapboard siding, has some architectural features with colonial revival stylistic preferences. The 6x6 double-hung windows, multi-light entry doors, and steeply pitched gable awnings over the entries are further demarcated by brick siding, and those are some of the revival-influenced details. There's a non-contributing garage at the rear of the structure. So that's a kind of a before photo. This is an after photo. Our records indicate in approximately August of 2014, Mr. Metzger purchased the property, and he's the applicant today. He began to do some repair and renovation work on this duplex to use it for a rental. And I should note that the appraiser's property record card, and anybody can go onto the appraiser's website, but a lot of people don't know that they can. You can go onto the appraiser's property website and look up details about a property. And so if you do go on and look at this property detail, it does mention it's in a historic district. So if anyone has a question about whether they are in a historic district, that's probably a good source. Also, you can call the city and we can let you know. We do have this information on our website as well. So here's a photo that the applicant took after post-renovation. You can tell that he's painted the house. This is the back of the house. And one of the projects that the applicant did was replace all of the windows that were in the house. They were formerly wood windows, and they were replaced with vinyl windows, and no permit was obtained prior to doing that replacement. A permit is required. Had the applicant come to the city to get the permit, that's what triggers us to do the historic review. So because the permit was not applied for, we were not able to talk to the applicant and do the historic review on the project, and so it became kind of a violation issue where we had to notify him and say, look, we noticed you put all these windows in, they don't meet our criteria, you need to go through the process, and that's why he's here today.
Janet, to clarify, would a permit have been required in any part of the city for new windows?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's what I thought.
Window replacements require a permit.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
Let's see here. We would have worked with the applicant. We try to work with applicants if they come to us and find alternatives to their project that would meet the Secretary of the Interior standards. So in this case, we would have, the Secretary of Interior standards say the first thing you should try to do is repair. I'm not sure, based upon the condition of these windows, if they could have all been repaired. I think some of them probably could have been. If they can't be repaired, then the next kind of threshold or guideline is to replace them with like material. So put in wood replacement windows. And then really the Secretary of the Interior standards don't allow you to replace it with vinyl. Vinyl is not considered an approvable material. I've had some discussions with some of the counselors about, well, what could have happened? Could they have put in double hung windows? And it's possible on some of the rear elevations, double hung would just be 1 over 1. Well, they're all double hung, but one panel over one panel, which are less expensive than these 6-panel things. We could have probably allowed that on some non-major elevations, like at the rear of the house. But that didn't happen. The applicant did maintain, however, the 6x6 pattern, and as far as we can tell, replaced the windows with the same style. They're vinyl. Now here's a few more photos of the condition. And like I said, I'm not really a windows expert or a contractor, but some of these do look like they're not really very repairable, and others I think probably could be repaired. And we don't have photos of all the windows. There's a couple more photos here. So the Landmarks Commission considered the application based on the Secretary of the Interior Standards for Rehabilitation, which we have an agreement with the state that we are an authorized certified local government. And what that means is we perform the historic review, we being the Landmarks Commission, performs that review on behalf of the state. So there's a lot of reasons why we would want to do that, but one is that hopefully the applicant can get through the process a lot quicker than having to send stuff up to Topeka. The Landmarks Commission considered the application on April 23rd, and they recommended denial based on the fact that that the project did not comply with the Secretary of the Interior's standards. So in state statute, there is a provision that allows applicants who have historic properties to appeal a landmarks determination. And the appeals come to the City Council, and the City Council has different review criteria. The Landmarks Commission can only look at the historic impacts, but you all have a lot of other impacts you can look at. And your threshold for review is no prudent and feasible alternative to the project. So the City Council is allowed to look at technical, design, economic issues, and then the relationship to the community-wide plan. And I'm going to quickly go through those. I've done an analysis in the staff report on each of these different issues. The two alternatives that I could see to the project, and there may have been others, but you don't have to do an exhaustive review, you just have a couple of feasible ones. But two alternatives that I came up with were repairing the existing windows or replacing with wood, and I think those would have both met the Secretary of Interior standards. As far as technically, a repair might not have been feasible for every single window. Replacing the windows would have been feasible with wood, and obviously the vinyl, the project itself was feasible because that's what was done. As far as design, all the alternatives would be prudent and feasible, and as I mentioned in the staff report, the applicant did keep the design of the windows the same, so didn't change the look of the house. As far as community-wide plan relationship, our community plan, our comprehensive plan, calls for not only maintaining our historic areas, but expanding them, listing more properties. So as far as the alternatives, I think both repairing and replacing would have been feasible. Probably the applicant's choice does not comply with the comprehensive plan because it does do some damage to this historic structure. It's not clear whether or not it would be enough to make it be unlisted, or not unlisted, but non-contributing. The state has said they haven't made that determination yet. But every window, as far as I'm aware, was replaced. And so really the last review criteria here is economics. And to repair the existing windows, it's hard because there was 26 windows, and in the time that we had and with the resources we have, we didn't go out and get a quote. We didn't have the original windows, so I just got a range basically. But the average cost to repair wood windows is $312 per window, and that's in the Kansas City area. If a window's not too badly impacted, it could be cheaper. We did have a call back from somebody who's a local window expert. He did the windows at the museum, and he said it's a range from about $200 to $800, depending on the window. So that's kind of a little bit difficult to pin down, but I don't think it's all that cheap. The vinyl window replacement would have been the most prudent alternative as far as cost, because they were $163 per window. That's for the 6/6. Some of them are probably less expensive than that. And then finally, the replacing wood with wood. I had in your staff report the information that was provided to me by the applicant. And that's from going to the Lowe's and Home Depot websites. I don't think Home Depot had one on their website, only Lowe's did, and it was a 6x6, and the price on that was, I put it in here, about 700, what did I have in the report?
$762.67.
Thank you. $762. I did go to the Lowe's website and poked around a little bit. Couldn't find anything in that size that was less expensive, but I did want to point out that if you go to the store, which I did not do, they do have some, Home Depot does have a wood replacement window, 6/6 for $310. And Councilmember Deckent had the opportunity to go out, actually go there, and he got that, but I'm assuming the applicant did what I did, which was just go on the website. So I'm not sure if those are more custom or why they are not listed on their website. At any rate, even the $310 is more than what the applicant paid. It's about the same cost as repair. So as far as economics, the least expensive alternative, the most prudent, would be to do what the applicant did, which is replace with vinyl. The other two are not prudent if you're looking just at the bottom line initial costs. There are a couple of things that I did want to point out to you all. The project, and I'm not sure, I don't think all the windows cost the same amount, but let's just say they did. 26 windows times the 163 comes up to be about $4,200. If the project had been over $5,000, the applicant could have applied for historic tax credits up to 25% of the cost of the project. They would basically reimburse you, rebate you that. So, and he also would have qualified for NRP funds. So between the two of those, that could have helped to offset the additional cost for historic. But again, he wasn't aware of, probably wasn't aware that that was even an option. And then the final thing I wanted to point out is that vinyl windows, even though they do say, you know, the salespeople tell you, oh, these will last a lifetime, they don't last as long as wood. They don't have to be painted, and you really can't paint them. Just like vinyl siding, you can try, but it peels off. And so what you find out is initially the cost is cheaper, but over time, it's really not the cheapest cost. So that's my analysis of the different issues that you're allowed to consider. And at this time, I don't have anything else to present to you except for the two options, but I do know the applicant is here, as well as a representative from the Houston Whiteside District who wanted to address the City Council.
And Jana, we did have another resident from the Houston Whiteside District that was unable to attend and has asked Councilmember Deckent to read a letter with his thoughts. So we will get to that in a second. Are there any comments or questions for staff from the council?
Jana, I know about the state historic tax credit being 25%. The NRP, could you talk about that briefly?
Yeah, that's the Neighborhood Revitalization Program. I might need a little help from staff here, but I'm going to try and wing it here. It's a rebate of the taxes that you pay on the increase in the taxes that you have from doing a project. So if he did a $5,000 project and it increased his taxes by $300, that's just a number I pulled out of the sky, he would be eligible, if it's an historic property, you're eligible to receive 100% of that rebate back for a period of 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's an
Right.
assumption there. that
The issue-
the appraiser will automatically increase the valuation based on what
Right.
the occupant has done to the house, and that's not necessarily the case.
It's not necessarily
No.
the case, that's true. I think that the NRP was put in place by city council actually to not discourage people from doing work on their houses
Right.
or on their commercial properties. So it kind of, what it does is say, well, if you get these increases, we're gonna try and help you offset it. If you're not in a historic district, you don't get as much. The percentage goes down over time, but in a historic district, it's 100%.
But probably windows, in my estimation, would not play into the valuation of the house, but.
Is painting something that can benefit from the income tax historic credit?
From the, yes. I believe your total project has to be more than $5,000.
Correct.
The state has told us any kind of improvements, as long as you comply with their standards. And actually, if you're doing a project that is eligible for state tax credits and you're going to apply for them, the state does the review. The city doesn't. So that's why we're not as versed in that program.
It's my understanding, though, that those grants or reimbursements aren't necessarily easy to get, or there's a process for the application and those funds are limited like everything else at the state.
There is a process. We actually just recently had our CLG audit, so we asked the representative from the state, Katrina Ringler, we asked her, well, are these state tax credits in danger of going away? Because that's a rumor that we frequently hear. She said no, they've not. That's not been something that's been attacked. As far as what they have taken away is the environments review, as you guys, I don't even want to confuse people with that, but. And they've also revised how the historic trust fund was funded. It used to be funded through a percent on the sale of real estate, and they've kind of changed the funding for that, but they haven't touched this tax credits, and there's been no talk of it.
May I respond? I applied for and received tax credits about 4 or 5 years ago. Yes, there's an application process, and so it's not something that one can turn around in a week. More like 60 days or so, probably.
Do a lot of people in that district use those tax credits, or would the city even know? Since it
We're
goes
supposed to get copies of the state's review because they have to, usually we'll apply for a building permit. And so no, not very many people use them. The Wiley building used them. We see more commercial properties taking advantage of the historic tax credits.
And speaking of applying for permits, are there penalties in place for people who fail to get the permit?
According to the building official, we do have the ability to charge a penalty, but if it's an individual, like in this case, who's not a contractor, who we try to be forgiving and just charge them the permit fee. And if it was a repeated case where the same individual was, doing this over and over, yes, we can charge up to double the permit amount.
Do we know, was the work done by a contractor or by the individual himself?
I don't know. I believe it was the individual, but you'll have to ask that.
Okay, that can be clear.
Jen, in my recollection, at least the last couple of years, the previous city council overrode the Landmarks Commission on and many or several similar cases. Is this a similar case to those that we overrode here the last 2 years, to my knowledge?
Yes, I think it's probably most similar to the Minner case where the property owner had started the project. It was about halfway done, was re-siding. The other two cases that you guys have overridden, well, I'm not gonna count demolitions because that's a
No.
different thing.
No.
But the other two cases, the people came in to get the permit, they came in before they did the work.
Yeah.
But this one's similar to the Minner case in that the permit was not pulled.
I think that's my biggest frustration, that people don't seem to know that they have to get a building permit to do this kind of work. And I don't know how you address that problem. But
Steve, did you want to read Mr. Pound's letter?
Certainly. I was requested by a backyard neighbor to present, and you've got copies of this letter, and read it for entrance into the record, since he's unable to be here. It's addressed to Hutchinson City Council members. I am Laverne Pounds. I reside in the Houston Whiteside District. I also own the duplex at 6 and 8 South Cleveland behind Mr. Metzger's duplex on Avenue A. I'm writing this letter that I have asked Mr. Decken to read for me, as I am unable to attend this meeting due to work obligations. I'm offering my support for Mr. Metzger in the addition of the new windows that have been installed. He has taken this property that had been vacant and deteriorating for several years and greatly improved it. New roof, paint, and many other improvements have rehabilitated it into 2 nice living units for our South End area. I feel it is important that income properties such as this type should not be held to the same guidelines as a residential single-family home in this area. Many of the requirements would not be of good financial choices to be able to rehabilitate the properties and be able to maintain a marketable rent. The windows in question are a prime example. They have greatly improved the property and make it more secure and cost-efficient for the tenants that occupy the units. As you know, it is important that we improve the housing for this area, and it will only happen if investors such as Mr. Metzger are able to do so and still receive a return on their investment. I feel there is a big difference in the renovation of single-family homes compared to duplexes or multifamily homes. Duplexes and multifamily properties are income properties, and with the cost of building material as they are today, an investor has to watch the bottom line. I do not feel the windows are a deterrent to any historical single-family homes in the area. All of the improvements have been an asset to the area. Another vacant property has been put back into use. I thank Mr. Decken for his time in reading this letter so I am able to voice my opinion. Sincerely, Laverne Pounds, 512 East Avenue A. Thank you.
And just for my own clarification, again, we're just looking at whether or not we want to approve the building permit at this point in the process. This doesn't have anything to do with whether or not they're non-contributing or how the historic district views them. Is that wrong?
What you're being asked to do is basically one of 2 things. You can uphold the Landmarks Commission determination and deny the appeal. If you do that, you're saying that there was a feasible and prudent alternative to the project that the applicant chose not to do. The result of that, if you guys were to make that decision, would be that he'd be denied a building permit. He'd have to remove all those windows, go back through the process. Or the other alternative is grant the appeal of the Landmarks Commission, determining that there was no feasible and prudent alternative to the project.
I just wanted to make one short comment about Mr. Pound's letter, and I think he really hit the nail on the head. I feel that some of the decisions the council has made in the past few years have been interpreted as somewhat hostile toward the idea of preservation. And I mean, speaking for myself, I don't think that's the case at all. I think that it's we do lose something very special that we can't get back when those properties are not rehabilitated along historical standards. But as I've mentioned before, we're dealing with competing priorities. And that area of town in particular has not just the Houston Whiteside District, but that area of town has shown a significant deterioration in the housing stock. And it might be one of the areas most unable financially to rehabilitate to those type of standards. So I'm not sure that it's fair to the neighborhoods and the surrounding property owners to allow structures to continue to not just deteriorate, but rot unoccupied, and see their property values going down based on principle. So I think that's what some of these decisions have been about, not that we don't recognize the significance and the importance of maintaining historical standards, but simply that we're at a crossroads and we have to make a really tough decision. So I just wanted to mention that. Are there further comments or questions from the council, or would the applicant like to address the council?
If there's questions.
No, okay.
Well, I would move to grant the appeal of the Landmarks Commission determination or authorize the issuance of a building permit for 702 East Avenue A based upon the finding that there is no feasible and prudent alternative to the project.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there further discussion?
Yes, I was expecting some other comments and an opportunity to enter in. Well, first of all, I want to thank Mr. Metzger for making improvement and seeking to improve the property there on Avenue A. I certainly support that. And I understand the comments that you made, Madam Mayor. My problem with this issue is that there was not an opportunity because of the failure to draw a permit to before the fact and proactively engage in conversation that could have, in my opinion, allowed the property to be maintained in its historical character. With some of the checking that I did for prices, and considering the 25% tax credit, and the fact that there was other work done that would have taken that over $5,000 and been eligible for the same tax credit, it seems to me, in my doing some number crunching, that the cost would have been comparable, if not equal, and possibly even less. If there was another $5,000 or so worth of work done above and beyond the windows, that also could have been eligible for the tax credit. It seems ironic to me that we issued a proclamation earlier this month, 2 days ago, had a historic preservation ceremony, and within the last hour supported a public art program, art including architecture and historic preservation. And here we are considering allowing an action that probably takes a piece of property out of consideration as a contributing structure. I don't see historic preservation versus improvement of the housing stock as competing factors. I think that they can go hand in hand. I live in the area. I wholeheartedly support improving our housing stock, not only in the East and White Side, but certainly throughout the southeast area, the entire city, but certainly the south part of town. I've lived in a historic or an older house for nearly 40 years between my property ownership in Wichita and now here in Hutchinson for nearly the last 30 years. And it strikes me that each time persons enter my house, they're not talking about the decoration of the house. They're talking about its historic architecture, the interior of the house in terms of the millwork and other features that it has. I'm glad that we can't get rid of the historic designation. I think that it's a protection for a heritage and a culture and of the architecture in a part of the city that certainly is dealing with difficult times. We're certainly not out of them. The urban renewal phase of the 60s certainly did away with a lot of properties. Unfortunately, one of those here in Hutchinson, which I never saw, was the Basante Hotel. I'm sure that Councilmember Stolner requires that. I didn't come to the city until after that, but I recall people talking to me or mentioning to me, and I certainly wasn't seeking it. Remember the Basante, a grand hotel that didn't need to be demolished, but in urban renewal and newer is better sense of things, it came down. And as we would, if we continue to chip away at the historic, the Houston Whiteside neighborhood, we could eventually cause it to be decertified as a historic district. And I think if we do that and continue to chip away, we are allowing something to be lost that we have and that we can't get back. The other comment, or another comment I wanted to make is that the expectations of the historic designation are much like restrictive covenants, in my opinion. And we have some areas in town that have restrictive covenants. And granted, they aren't enforced by the city, but they are restrictive. Yeah, there are restrictive elements to the historic designation, but that's a part of living and owning property in that area. So I struggle with the idea of what a upholding of the Landmarks Commission decision would mean in terms of removal of windows, but I think that it was a failure on the part of the applicant to follow city code that's required citywide, and it removed and placed us in a position I'm upset being placed in, because had this been followed, the conversations would have occurred, the elements could have been looked at, and I think there'd have been a very good opportunity to do this in a fashion that would have not have needed appeal. So.
I do appreciate your comments and hearkening it back to some of the urban renewal efforts, because when we saw aluminum slapped on the side of all of those beautiful limestone Main Street buildings, and now we've seen those restored, we do see the benefit to the city of having that. I do like that we get to review each of the properties as they come to us. If Houston Whiteside's house, for instance, came before the council, or something else of relatively greater significance, I would hope we would take it each case by case. Nancy, did you have a few comments you wanted to make?
Not philosophically, Steve, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I really do. But I'm pragmatic enough to realize that at this point in time, there really aren't that many alternatives. I don't think it would be financially appropriate to make the owner remove the windows at this point. Somehow we've got to figure out a better way to educate people, whether they buy a house in that area to use as a rental or whether they're going to live there. And maybe it's going to take those of you who live in the Houston Whiteside area to kind of constantly monitor what's going on in the neighborhood. As properties turn over, you may have to be the ones who go to those purchasers and say, do you know you live in a historic home? This is what you have to do. Or you're going to use this as an income property. You have to do this as far as the standards are concerned. I don't know what the answers are, but we've had too many cases of people who have just totally been oblivious as to what's going on or what is required of them. And we got to figure out a way to deal with that.
And Jana, I thought it was mentioned in the packet that all the realtors know, so I'm not real sure what isn't being translated to the purchasers.
The Landmarks Commission is very frustrated with this issue as well. And so we've discussed a couple of things. One thing we might try to do is purchase, and this is just an idea, so I don't even know if I should bring it up, but purchase little hangers that would go on the real estate signs that say Historic District. I don't know that you all would want to pass an ordinance requiring people to put those on if they have a property listed, but certainly we could take those to the Board of Realtors and suggest strongly that they put those on. I have presented to the Board of Realtors a couple times and told them about the districts, but I haven't done like a intensive training on just that topic. So that could be in order as well. But just if you have any ideas, we'd be happy to entertain them.
Jana, do you get when a property in the district is sold, do you receive any kind of notification?
We don't.
Ideally, that would be a good way to allow you to be able to send this person a letter saying, you've just purchased a property in a historic district, congratulations. But here are some things that you need to know about this property. And I don't know if there's any way to implement that, but it might be one way.
Yeah, I could certainly meet with the Board of Realtors and see if that's something that we could do or even how to go about that. So that's something
Yeah.
I will commit to the council to do, because it's just as frustrating for staff to have to come here and present these cases where we can see both sides.
Mhm.
It's really very tough.
The other fear I run into is if we're setting some sort of precedent that it's easier to ask for forgiveness than permission
That's
Mhm.
what my
Yeah.
concern was when I noticed a
Yeah.
permit wasn't pulled.
in a situation like this. And that's something I struggle with, but I'm also pragmatic in that sense that the work has been done.
It's been done.
I struggled with that a lot, yeah.
Well, we do have a motion and a second on record to appeal, or,
To grant the appeal.
yeah,
Grant
to
the
grant the
Grant the
appeal.
appeal.
Please call the roll.
Deckent,
No.
Inskeep,
Yes.
Daveline,
Yes.
Soldner,
Yes.
Pyros de Carvalho.
Yes. Next item, please.
Item 8B, consider use of transient guest tax agreement for Atrium Convention Center.
Madam Mayor and Council, in July of 2004, the city entered into a development agreement with HPA Associates to build a convention center that was attached to the hotel at that time, and I can't really remember the name. The one was a Ramada, the Grand Prairie. The city at that time added, actually back in early 2001, I believe, added an additional 3% to the existing 4% transient guest tax, with the additional 3% being committed to the developer for this project for 18 years. The agreement also stipulated that annually the city would retain $11,100 of that money into a sinking fund that would be used strictly for future maintenance and improvements to the convention center space. In 2008, thereabouts, after only a few years of operation, the property fell into foreclosure, and we all know the history there. And the banks that held the debt essentially continued to operate the hotel through a hotel management a contract. During this time, the city continued to pay the 3% to the ownership group, and essentially we noted that at that time that money was being used simply for operations and wasn't going back into the original intent of that, which was to build the convention center. So in fast forward to 2014, the hotel was purchased by Joshua Joseph, and the city at some point in time during those discussions with the bank that was holding the note, as well as prospective buyers, indicated that we would no longer continue to provide that 3% to the property, or at least it wasn't guaranteed. And so over the past several months, we've had numerous conversations with Joshua and his group as to what his plans were for the property, and whether the city council would continue to provide 3% for improvements to the property. So we're at a point today where the agreement before you today really reflects the results of many of those conversations over the past several months that would provide a portion of that 3% bed tax to continue to go to the hotel owner for specific improvements to the convention center space only. And real briefly, just a quick summary of the terms of the agreement that you have before you. The city would provide 2% of the current 3% bed tax money for renovation and improvements to convention center space only. All projects would have to be approved in advance by the city. The hotel owner would essentially obtain bids, would contract for that work, and once that work is completed and approved and show a paid receipt to the contractor, then the city would then reimburse the property owner for that project. We also did note in there that intent that we really want them to use local contractors if at all possible, and that's in the agreement as well. This agreement is it's not a long-term, it's a 5-year agreement, but it also does provide the ability of the city to terminate the agreement should the property owner not maintain a hotel and restaurant area to a level that is necessary, we think, to provide consistent quality service to bring new conventions in and to retain the current conventions that we have. So and with that, at this point in time, just to enter into more discussion, staff would recommend approval of the proposed agreement that you have before you today. And again, I did note that the hotel owner is present today, made the trip up to basically be able to address any questions the council might have on what his intent and plans are for the property. And I will note, just for the discussion, that all 5 of the council members have had a chance over the last 4 or 5 days to tour the facility with the general manager and look at some of the most recent improvements to the facility. So with that, I'll stand for questions at the council, and Mayor, I'll turn it back to you to handle as you wish.
Questions for staff?
John, the 2%, would that be applicable only to new revenue coming in, or also to what we may have on deposit, so to speak?
The way that worked, that's a good question. I hadn't really noted that, but our plan would be that the current money that we've got collected, which today is around $300,000, that money would be eligible for this new agreement. So it's not just from here forward. So I know the initial project that the applicant or the owner is looking at is a new air conditioning system for the older part of the convention center space, which I believe is estimated at $150,000. And so we would utilize existing funds and make those eligible for other improvements as we move forward. So
I do have some questions on the contract, but before we get into that, if I can, I wonder if we could invite Mr. Joseph up to the dais here. And thank you for your patience here, sir, this morning. And give us perhaps an overview of what your planned intentions are. If we were to approve this, what your planned intentions would be in terms of the renovation of the convention component, which impacts the cities, the 2%, as well as more directly also a pretty thorough overview of your planned upgrades to the hotel, and namely the rooms itself, because that's such a critical part of this whole project. Yes. Is we can do some wonderful things on the convention side, but if we don't address the room piece of it, then I think we're negligent in terms of bringing this project up to improved standards. So if you would, thank you, sir.
Well, thank you so much, respected mayor, all council members, and the city manager, city attorney, and all of you present here. I thank you all for giving me this opportunity to come here and address before you. As you all know about the convention center, I myself in 2008 did come to check the property out because it was for sale since a very long time. And at that moment I walked in the hotel and I walked straight out because I was not interested in that place. It was really run down, and it kept going down since then. It so happened, again, I was approached in 2013, I think, about the property. And this time, the banks were really interested. And before I even took an effort to look at the property, I did come and meet the city manager. And at that present time, the mayor looks new to me. Yeah. So I think it was
Mayor Pruitt,
a different mayor at that time. And when I met the city manager and the mayor, I was actually really pleased with the city, seeing that the city was actually wanting to do something and improve the property. And you have to see the property being 5 or 6 years in the market without, with no confidence of the customers or the people to bring conventions in town. It really went down. Since we took over, we did not want to force or ask the city to give us just anything for free. We want to make sure, it's just like from the beginning I asked John, that we will do our part and we would ask you to do your part. And that was the condition since the very beginning. I'm not looking for no free money, and I don't expect it, but I know this is a great asset for Hutchinson. I wouldn't want to see the convention center turn into something else. At first, there was a lot of things recommended, and when I first came to the hotel, one of the managers told me, "Hey, this could be a good U-Haul place," and that was the way people were talking. But since we did take over the place, we see a substantial revenue. We have increased. We have got the confidence of people. Our sales managers and the team. Greg is the general manager here. If you see him, he has brought a lot of knowledge of turning around distressed properties, and we have gone multiple times to Topeka, and we have brought in more conventions, and we have already increased the revenue. At this point, I would also say, we are working with the chamber and trying really hard to bring more and more conventions. We are being very flexible. The convention people don't have to go through many layers of management that has to approve and not approve, the rates, and I have given Greg full authority. All he just needs to call me, and in fact, every staff has my cell phone number where if they have to make a decision, it's one phone call away. And most of the time, the GM and the staff has all right to make a decision. And we have started the remodeling. We've started the rooms. We are planning. It's going to be a challenge because of how the hotel was built. But we are trying to, the major problem which we were facing was the air conditioning system, which the whole, every convention was leaving this town because of the air conditioning system. It's, in the public areas and the rooms. So what we decided is the best and only way we could solve this, instead of tearing the hotel apart and changing every piping, was to take walls out and those big old windows that you all see, which looks really bad for, foggy windows, and the property looks bad from the highway. We said the best and easy way to resolve the issue was to take those windows out, put stucco, and put in individual air conditions. And just by doing that itself, as you all have seen, it gave a lot more color to the room. And little things like this, it does cost a lot because the electrical was not easy to bring in to the room. But we want to give this, you all an opportunity to look at it and see that, this can be done. And so we are putting our funds first, getting things done. And as summer is approaching, we all know the public areas. We just had Kansas insurance companies and many other, KKI, and many other conventions came in, and they already like the improvements, and most of them, want us to continue doing the same thing to the rest of the rooms. And that is our plan, to continue doing the renovations, and as you see, I'm no big corporate person. I'm an individual person, and as I bring in funds, with the help of the banks, I thank Quail Creek Bank from Oklahoma City, finance this project, and we have requested more loans to finish the rest of the part, and they have approved me $400,000 to continue doing the renovation. And so, as we speak, we're just waiting for the rain to subside a little bit so we can continue. Hopefully, next week or the week later, we'll finish our stucco to the present rooms that we have completed, and then we'll start on all those rooms that face highway. and then there's a lot more rooms to be done. We're going to do the same thing to the inside rooms, except we have to think a lot more to the rooms that has the additional convention space, how we're going to deal with that. But pretty much we're going to try and have all the rooms with either individual ACs or slowly take the whole old chiller system away. And at the same time, we will continue next year. This year we'll try to finish most of the windows, and next year and put new individual air conditions and paint the rooms. And next year we're going to focus on all the room carpet and hallway carpet. And then, as some of you have known, the hotel has less sink space, so we have started with few rooms of redesigning the rooms. But all in all, I'm here to assure you all that me, Greg, and the whole staff, we are going to give our 100%, and we're going to fix that place up, and we're going to bring a lot more conventions into this place. And I'm for profit, so I need some profit to continue growing. So I will do my best to turn this property that was for the last 15 years or more than that was a disaster to an investor. But I already see a lot of potential in the city, especially with all of you in so detail with every little thing that you are in and so involved. And I really appreciate your all the efforts you all take, and I really admire all of you all. And if there is any time you all can get my cell phone number with John. I come here mostly every other week, but anytime you all want me, I'll be here. Any one of you all want any questions, I'll be here to answer. And not a penny of the funds will go to my pocket. It will go for the convention center and the public areas, so that every customer, we can attract more customers into this town, and we'll make it a better convention place.
Thank you for that overview. That's very, very helpful, I think, to all of us. I know it's a big challenge, but also I think we're certainly at a crossroads, and I think you know the history of the property. Paul, I'd like to maybe speak a little bit to the contract itself, if I can. Under Article 3, 3-7, the language there reads, owner's failure to maintain the hotel and restaurant at the level necessary to provide consistent quality service needed to effectively support the convention center. I'm wondering if there is a way that, in fairness to Mr. Joseph, but also in fairness to the city, that we put a little more teeth into this language here that hopefully could identify some specific language that would give the city council some assurances that you plan to move forward in a timely fashion with the renovation of the rooms themselves, dealing with upgrading those standards, dealing with the known plumbing problems, issues that we've had, and you know the history of that. But Paul, I'm hoping that we could tighten this language in a way that we could put some measurements into this, that we could evaluate, because this to me is very difficult to enforce that, or for the city to determine unless we visibly see Mr. Joseph's plan in terms of the hotel renovation over time. And I know it's a time issue. So that's my question to you, Paul, as to whether or not you could expand this to tighten the language up.
You don't actually have to do that. We have a number of outs in the contract, and I probably couldn't put much more in there and still have a binding agreement, because with this particular contract, we don't have to approve any of those projects. We're not bound to approve them. We get to look at each one. And if it comes along and we look at it and say, you know what, the hotel doesn't measure up, we're not interested in putting more money in it, we're not obligated to approve any further projects.
Yeah, but we're not approving what he does in the rooms, right?
That's true.
You
Yeah,
know,
that's- that
and I
to me is
think
where
that's
the-
John's concern and mine too, to some extent, that the rooms are updated to a quality standard that will enable the convention center to be marketed. We saw some good examples the other day when we toured, and so I think they're in process, but I'd kind of like to see a timeline of, you know, where are we gonna deal with some of the nuts and bolts stuff, the cosmetic appearances of the rooms in addition to the air conditioning. Does that make any sense?
I understand that. I understand how you
But
want
it's
to tie it
something
to
we
the rest of
can't
the
control.
hotel. I can also tell you that these funds can only be used on the
I know.
convention
Yeah,
center.
we understand.
We
But
understand
understand me when I say, we don't have to approve any of these projects, and we're gonna approve each one of them individually. And council, if the city staff looks at the hotel and says, these don't measure up, we don't have to approve any more of their projects.
Okay.
You can stop. You can also stop the transient guest tax and amend it, because we didn't put anything in the contract that said we'll continue that transient guest tax.
It was very purposefully vague, is what you're saying.
It's not vague. I'm telling you, we've got several outs, and
Well,
if
the
it
improvement-
doesn't measure up,
Improvement-
we're not going to
improvement
do it.
Measures are
Yeah.
vague.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
It's
think-
literally saying, you're my boss, so you can fire me any day you please like. I would also request the council and the city to see if, other than the convention center, we have the public space where we have the old pool area and things like that. The water park, that is just a disaster. If you all will include that in that area, because that is going to be in the convention space area, because improving that will give, we can also make it a convention, additional convention, like a small arena space, and take all that things out. And if you all can add that, that will actually really improve the hotel, because that is an eyesore for many, many years. And as important as the convention center is, I think that is a very important part of that.
I think that might be prohibited by the state statute, because is that considered part of the original hotel? That was a built-on portion of the convention center.
And that's true. If that was going to be considered, there'd have to be a specific proposal for that.
Okay.
You'd have to have
Some
the
plans.
area outlined, and we'd have to know what renovations would be made there,
Plans.
and what would be the purpose of the area to make sure that it meets statutory requirements, because currently it would not.
Yeah, I would really make it like a small arena. Conventions can be done in these type of open spaces, like a boxing match, and and things like that, because it's so much open area,
Yeah.
and I think it could fit into a future convention space, which would give us much more room.
I do think you have a good point, but that might be a separate agreement.
Maybe down the
I think
road.
it would have
You
to.
really need to get a specific proposal together, and then submit that to city staff.
Okay.
Are you saying though, Paul, that it's maybe possible that that could be included?
It could be possible, depending on the use, because we have a statutory limitation on how the funds are used. That's why we can use it for the existing convention center, but we can't go to the rest of the hotel and use it for renovations.
Right.
So
That would
it
in
is
essence be
possible.
subsidizing a private business.
Yeah, but if it
Yeah.
enhances the convention
Yeah.
experience, I think that's
Might be.
certainly a legitimate consideration.
And if the ownership shows good faith and
Yeah.
gets the rest of the hotel up to
I-
speed.
And
I think
Mr. Oh, go ahead. I was going to say, Mr. Joseph, I think we were all really impressed with the improvements that have been made thus far. I think getting that old chiller system out is so crucial to just the entire air quality of the convention center. And I was very doubtful prior to walking into the rooms and touring them with Greg that anything could really be done to make the mustiness go away. But it has helped immensely, and some of the other improvements with the bathroom reconfiguration have been very much appreciated. I believe Greg mentioned that 50% of the rooms are slated to be done by the time of the Kansas State Fair. Is that still the timeline?
Yes.
That's
We may, if the weather permits, we may start hurrying up, a little earlier than that, because we want to give a better experience so that, so people already start seeing the change. In fact, we have already received compliments from the insurance company who filled the city, but, filled our hotel up too. And they already booked. And there's several conventions from last year already started booking. And since people are already seeing improvements and they're going back to Topeka and talking to the other conventioners, I think we're going to see, as we progress, we're going to see a lot of more conventions coming back to the city.
Just to address the question, and I mean, from our perspective, staff, we left it vague.
I know.
On purpose. And it was difficult to put down years and time and dollars because the dollars may not tie with what we're looking for. I mean, they may do it on things that really don't enhance the hotel property. And unfortunately, it's kind of one of those things that, 3.7, we know it when we see it. And it's, again, it was left vague on purpose. So if there's a request to tie things down, we need to get some direction from the council in terms of what are those?
Yeah.
What is it? Is it years? Is it dollars? Is it number of rooms? Is it
I
toilets?
guess where I'm coming from is that we've learned over the last 10 or 15 years, anticipated grand plans for the hotel, and they were grand plans. And a portion of them were executed just fine because we now have the convention center. But where the deficiencies rested with the previous owners, certainly not yourself, Mr. Joseph, we came up short. And I guess from an elected body standpoint, I would advocate that we address the need for room renovations. We talk about services and so on, but we don't talk about the need for room renovations and the associated deficiencies there. Whether the dome area fits into the 2%, I'm not sure, but I'm honing in on the need for the room renovations. Don't necessarily need to put a time schedule, but perhaps some ability by the city to put some teeth into this thing that we can look each other in the eye and say it has not met our standards and we need to talk. I know it's a good faith situation, but we've learned from past experiences the problems that were anticipated that never happened.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've got the teeth because I think if I or any of us make that determination, we'll obviously communicate that with the council. You all are going to experience that and see it, and we simply write a letter and say, sorry, we don't feel like you've met our expectations. Again, I know very vague at this point,
Yeah.
but I think it's fairly easy to point to room improvements and see what's going on to determine whether Mr. Joseph is making the progress that we're looking for.
so the lack of language actually benefits the city.
I mean, in my opinion, but I understand because that was the problem with the last agreement.
Yes.
Is the performance requirements were not there. I mean, it just, they weren't there. It got us in a problem situation.
Mr. Joseph, can you comment on when you think the remainder of the rooms will be brought up to standards?
My goal is to finish most of the hotel this year on the room part, to have them all or almost all of them that is possible to have them all in single units. And then, I'll be addressing next year, I'll have a plan for, the rest of the, for the carpets and for, down the road, maybe in a couple of years, the room furniture. The room furniture was replaced a few years back, so it's not time yet for the room furniture to be gone yet. So
But
I'll
the
have a
chiller-
timeline of everything, and we will, keep John and his staff updated on what we are doing. And of course, take the necessary permits and continue doing the work. And we are here to I'm not going to stand here and promise we're going to make a palace like people did before.
Right.
And I'm not, it is a building what it is. The only thing you could do to do anything better there is demolish and make a nice hotel over there. And at this point, it's not feasible. But what we are going to do our best is see if this same place that was bad for all these years, let's see if we can bring it back, not to its old glory, but to a place where most of the conventions and most of the people would love to come back to the city and be one of the competition to the DoubleTree and the other new convention places that are going, in all the little cities in Kansas. And so far, I think we are doing good, and down the road, I think we'll be able to. We have a better management structure, because we don't have many layers of management and management companies to decide. Here in one phone call, I can say a yes or no for a convention to make a deal, and that is going to help a lot in our process. And my goal is to give a better service to our guests, so that the more we can please our customers, the more business the more conventions we can get into the city. And most of our conventions so far has been filling up all the rest of the hotels too in this town. So it doesn't just benefit our hotel, it actually benefits the town and all the other businesses in town.
Mr. Joseph, how many rooms have you changed the air conditioning in thus far?
So far, it's around 42.
42, and that's
Yes.
out of
215.
215.
215.
John, I'm wondering, if when application or a proposal is brought, if each time, if we've got 42 rooms now,
Yeah.
we could be told how many more rooms have AC, or how many rooms have gotten new carpet, or et cetera. If that might assuage some of your concerns, just in terms of our having, here's what has happened type of thing between proposals.
I think that's what the city attorney was proposing. When those things come to us, we will have the ability to ask those type questions to then determine if we want to release funds for any other project, if I'm hearing correct.
And that's correct.
Yeah.
Actually, those proposals will be coming to the city manager.
And my obligation to report to you all, but
Yeah.
the intent of this isn't to bring every project back to the council for approval at this level.
Right.
I mean, that's the way this agreement's written. Just like in the past, the money just flowed through the project for its intended purpose, so. So, yeah, I would agree it's not perfect, but I think it's difficult to talk about specifics that you're referring to, and because some of the quality level services is the maid services. I mean, there are a lot of things other than just room improvements that make a convention center a quality room for a convention center space. So there's a whole list of criteria that we probably could develop, but I just feel like from the city's perspective, this is written with so much flexibility, probably more than what you're comfortable with, obviously. But it also gives us the flexibility. We're not tied into something until 2023 like the old agreement did. The old agreement, if the bankruptcy had not occurred, we would be paying this to that project until 2023 with no say, no questioning about the condition of rooms or the service level or anything.
And you also couldn't repeal the transient guest tax because you agreed not to in that original contract, which you have not agreed to in this contract.
Mr. Joseph, I did want to mention that it probably appears that you're being put through the ringer, but it's no reflection on you. It's simply that we obviously didn't make the right choice with our developer last time, and so you're unfortunately feeling the heat of that. But we do appreciate your investment in our community, and we know you're dealing with a structure that's nearly 40 years old, and
Yes.
and it's hard to bring it up to today's standards. So you're doing your best, and we appreciate that.
Thank you. Down the road, if things, go really well and, business starts coming in, we could sit back in the table and, talk about if we still do need another, a new hotel to be attached to the convention center and things like that. So, but the improvement of what we do and bringing back business and the confidence of conventioners, I think will help us make that decision maybe 3-4 years down the road.
I thought of one more piece. When we were touring the hotel the other day, it was brought up that the rooms that have both interior and exterior entry, those were going to be done away with. It would be just interior entries. Am I correct?
Yes, when
Okay.
we do when we change them, we're only going to have interior
Right.
entries.
Is there any plan to switch those or convert those rooms over any quicker than, say, the others from a security type standpoint to get rid of anybody of suspect character that might be
In those type of rooms.
those type of things? Yeah.
We can, that whole is one section now that is going to be facing the road. Yeah, so we can start from the banquet side, from the convention side, so that those will be hit first. There are times some of the workers prefer those rooms, for easy entry and in and out. But we'll focus on those rooms.
A thought.
first. Yes,
I'm not sure. A thought.
we can do that.
Further questions or comments? I notice we do have the director of our Convention and Visitors Bureau in the audience. Would you like to make any comments? Everyone's going to stop coming to these meetings if I continue to call them out, huh? So, if not, I would entertain a motion on this item.
I move that we approve the agreement as presented by staff.
I'll second.
Please call the roll.
Deckent?
Yes.
Inskeep?
Yes.
Dave Line?
Yes.
Soldner?
Yes.
Tyros de Carvalho?
Yes. Next item, please.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Item 8C, consider special alcohol fund awards for 2016.
Fair, you can't leave it, we can't.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. I'm Merrill Dye, the Assistant City Manager. State statute requires the city to expend 1/3 of liquor by the drink tax funds for the purchase, establishment, maintenance, or expansion of services or programs whose principal purpose is alcoholism and drug abuse prevention, education, detox, intervention, and treatment of persons who are alcoholics or drug abusers. We have a number of agencies that apply for these funds each year. And this year, the number is somewhat reduced. We've had more agencies in the past, but this year we have only 4 agencies that came forward and requested these funds, and these are agencies that have been requesting funds for a number of years. These include Big Brothers and Big Sisters, which is primarily a prevention program with the goal of helping at-risk children between the ages of 5 and 17 to avoid drugs, alcohol, delinquency, and education failure by matching children into one-to-one mentoring relationships with volunteers. Boys and Girls Club, which provides programs mainly after school. They've had a program in place called Smart Moves for a number of years now, which is designed to prevent drug and alcohol abuse through targeted education, prevention, mentoring, and programs to boost self-esteem. Communities That Care, which targets families and students between the ages of 10 to 14 in several area school districts to provide tutoring, life skills, strengthening families to address risk factors that can lead to substance abuse. as well as other problems. And then also our Reno County Drug Court, and you heard about that program a little bit earlier today with the proclamation and the successes that they have been having with the drug court program. Many of these agencies work hand in hand with one another to try to address drug and alcohol abuse, so it's kind of a wraparound system of services. We have a special alcohol fund committee that was established some years ago. That committee includes retired police Captain Richard Wycliffe, the city attorney Paul Brown, our probation officer Kathy Nisley, Linda Ojeda, our legal staff aide, and myself. This year, because we had requests that totaled less than what we anticipate in revenues, and because we're familiar with these programs, the committee decided not to meet and interview with these groups and just move forward with a recommendation to award these agencies.
I found that very odd. I didn't see RCAT on here. I didn't see New Beginnings on here. Do you have any idea why some of those organizations that used to request
I'm not sure
funds-
why they didn't
Okay.
apply. It's been several years since New Beginnings has applied, and last time they received funds was in 2012, and they just haven't had that program in place that they were using the funds for the first year or two. But yeah, we've had Prairie View, which has moved out of the community, the Reno County Court Services, in the past, the Substance Abuse Center of Kansas, and Youth Leadership of Reno County.
Yeah, SAC has expanded here, so I'm really surprised that they didn't.
You know,
We had a conversation last year about all of these funds going to prevention instead of direct services, and maybe allocating them a little more heavily on the direct services. But if they don't apply, we can't really allocate.
And these agencies that I've mentioned know of our timelines for this, and they know our process for awarding the funds. So, but again, we just had these 4 agencies that have come forward: Big Brothers, Big Sisters, Boys and Girls Club, Communities That Care, and the Drug Court. So the total of those requests is $75,000. We anticipate revenues around $90,000. And then we always start, or usually start, with a carryover from the previous year. So with that, we anticipate in 2016 that we could end the year with about $25,000. So with that, the committee recommends award for the requested amounts by these agencies. Be happy to answer any questions.
Questions, comments, or a motion on this item?
I will move to approve the funding recommendations as presented.
Second?
Please call the roll.
Deckent?
Yes.
Inskeep?
Yes.
Dave Line?
Yes.
Soldner?
Yes.
Iris De Carvalho?
Yes, next item, please.
Item 8D, consider consultant agreement with BG Consultants for raw water connection water line.
Good morning.
It's a mouthful.
You got it right. Good morning, Mayor and Council. My name is Jeff Peterson. I'm a senior civil engineer in the engineering department. Today I'm presenting the consultant agreement for BG Consultants for that water line that was just described. It's a 16-inch diameter water line that'll give us a benefit of having an alternate or redundant water supply to feed overall our RO facility. It just provides a link, essentially. So the BG Consultants was selected after reviewing proposals from 3 firms familiar with the city's water system. And with that, the design portion of the contract is an hourly contract, not to exceed a cost of $72,000. And the construction services portion, or after bidding portion of the contract, would be billed hourly for the services provided. So the location is noted on the map above there on the monitors. It's about a mile long, and there's quite a few things that might present some challenges to get the water line through there with different utilities. But, as noted in the council memo, contract costs will be funded by the water utility CIP funds. And with that, we're recommending approval of the consultant agreement for design services with BG Consultants. Do you guys have any questions?
More of a curiosity for myself, the line appears to run on the north side of 30th. Is that
I don't know
just
that
the way
that's
through,
been
or-
decided at this point.
Okay.
We've looked a little bit on both sides. There's city water lines actually on the south side too, so there's gonna be some things that we have to deal with as we go through there. And we have a box underneath due to Oxford Point that we need to cross. There's some things that will have to be crossed to get it there. It does provide a link, and I think there's a good benefit for putting this in the long run. So if we have to take one line down, the other line can still provide water to the RO facility, so.
And construction on the actual line will begin
Well,
approximately.
Approximately. Originally, we were thinking maybe later this fall, but it
Mhm.
might slide into the end of the year time period.
Okay.
So it kind of depends on getting everything coordinated.
And the length of the project?
It's about a mile long, actually.
Okay. And time as well, length?
Oh, time, that hasn't been determined because we're looking at
You don't
maybe
have
some
it
options
defined.
of some different things of construction, maybe more boring per se, which might be a little more faster than conventional construction. So those details haven't been determined yet. So.
Okay.
The funding, is this a holdover? There was a reference, I think, to CIP in 2013.
That's when it was originally proposed. That is correct. Funds were put in a CIP account per se for that. Due to time constraints, staff was originally thinking about being able to get that taken care of, but being a little bit short-staffed, we can't.
Okay.
get
But the
it.
funding is already there and it's encumbered, so to speak, or?
It is.
In a CIP reserve.
At least,
yeah.
Okay.
at least a portion of it per se.
It's set aside.
We do have reserves for that if it does go over that.
Yeah, it's not unusual to approve a project in a CIP 1 year and design the next year in construction. It could be over a course of 3 years, depending upon.
It's just kind of how it works into our schedules
Yeah.
of getting things done.
Further
Good
questions or a motion?
I would move to approve the proposed contract with BG Consultants for engineering services as outlined by staff.
The only question I have before I second is what type of artwork will we be using?
Those are exempted,
This-
actually. I
this-
heard
this
that
doesn't
part.
count.
Blue pipe.
Other than that, I
Actually, it might be
second.
purple pipe.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Deckent,
Yes.
Inskeep,
Yes.
Dave Line,
Yes.
Soldner,
Yes.
Tyrus de Carvalho.
Yes, next item.
Item,
Jeff, I'll let you go.
item 8E, consider bid report for 2015 water line replacement project.
Sorry, just getting a little antsy, I guess.
We all are.
Again,
yeah.
Jeff Peterson, Senior Civil Engineer in the Engineering Department. Last week, we actually received bids for the proposed 2015 water main replacement project. We received 6 bids, and we had a low bid of $870,866.60 from Mees Construction of Wichita. The project, we have another overhead, but it'll come up. The project locations are varied throughout there it is, kind of the southeast part of town. It's in an area where after looking at water main breaks and maintenance we have in the areas, that the water main was actually constructed in the 50s, and looking at our statistics for those repairs and things like that, this is an area where we've had probably some of the most water main breaks, along with Main Street, but that's getting taken care of this year too. So we're trying to provide a little more reliable system in these areas and actually extend or make our distribution system a little more sustainable as we go forward. So the proposed completion date for this project is actually March 18th, 2016. and the cost will be funded through the Water Department with existing water line CIP reserve funds. The city has worked with Mies Construction on other projects. Primarily, last year we worked with them on the Kissawah North Second subdivision that was completed last fall. And with that, we're recommending approval and award to Mies Construction and authorizing the mayor to sign contracts for this project. So, are there any questions on this project?
Jeff, I know we're going through a transition in anticipating the implementation of stormwater utility program and so on. Does this roll into that, or is this
Actually, this doesn't
essentially
have anything.
separate? It
This
has
is
nothing to do
totally
with it?
separate. This is
Okay.
the water utility. It doesn't have anything to do with the stormwater
All right,
utility.
okay.
So,
All right.
Is anybody concerned, engineer or otherwise, about the bid coming in a great deal lower than the engineer's estimate?
well, if you look at the spread of them, we're kind of in the middle of all the different bids. I'm not, because we have two fairly competitive bids with the two bottom ones. So I mean, within 40 plus or minus 40,000 on a $900,000 job. I think that's a pretty competitive.
So we won't expect any change orders.
Well, especially going into existing areas, I can't tell you that you can't expect any, but I would like that.
See how we trapped you there, Jeff?
You did. That's okay.
Oh, you did construction management at risk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You want to take that on?
No, I don't think any of these do that.
Oh, goodness. All right, is there a motion on this item?
I move we approve the awarding of this water project to Mies Construction as presented by staff.
Second?
Please call the roll.
Deckent?
Yes.
Inskeep?
Yes.
Dave Line?
Yes.
Soldner?
Yes.
Pyrus de Carvalho?
Yes, next item, please.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Item
Jeff.
8F, consider exercise of option to acquire real estate by Siemens Energy, Inc.
Paul Brown, City Attorney. We originally had a development agreement with Siemens back in October of 2009. Before the 5-year option period expired, we executed an amendment to that development agreement to extend the options on lots 2, 8, 9, 10, and 12 to be acquired by Siemens. Part of that was removing the uses that they required for that, and another part of that was to exclude Lot 5, which is to the south. Lots 2, 8, 9, 10, and 12 are directly across the street on Commerce Street to the west of the current Siemens facility, directly to the west, right across the street, okay? And these lots, there's nothing on them other than wheat currently. And Siemens has now executed their option agreement. There'll be a closing on this. There hasn't been a title commitment issued yet with the title requirements to close, but I needed to get this in front of the city council to authorize the mayor to sign. This is not a new obligation. We are already obligated by the amendment to the development agreement. Having exercised that option, now we need to close that and actually transfer the real estate to them. That will happen once the title commitment has been completed and the requirements disclosed. So at this point, we're just asking for the council's approval for the mayor to sign the warranty deed and the closing documents.
They're good with the pricing?
I believe so.
I'll bet. $1 an acre, you bet.
Still a little bitter about that. Let's not bring that up.
I move we approve the transfer of these lots as presented by staff to Siemens.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Deckent?
Yes.
Inskeep?
Yes.
Dave Line?
Yes.
Soldner?
Yes.
Pyrus de Carvalho?
Yes, next item, please.
Item 9, report of city officials.
Let's start with Nancy.
Nothing today.
What about you, Steve?
Well, not a report, but I'd be interested in pursuing some discussion, some looking at the issue of failure to pull city permits.
I
I
think
guess
that's
it'd be a
good.
negative incentive probably, but I'd like to look at that and discuss that further or hear something from staff on that issue. That's it.
Okay. Dave, do you have anything?
I have nothing at this time, thank you.
John?
No, nothing this morning.
I have nothing as well. John?
just a reminder, and I'm not sure, airport tour on Friday, who's gonna be able to be there? I've had a couple of you respond, I know.
I'll be there.
So we had 3, okay.
That's including a helicopter ride you told us,
Well,
right?
Yeah, yeah, you're on your own there. So you signed a consent form, releasing us of all liability, so. And that's all I have, other than Mayor, I'd ask for a motion to recess an executive session for the purpose of discussing employer-employee negotiations until 12:30.
Is that an option or?
Well, I just,
I'm just
yeah, we'll be out
Okay.
before then, hopefully.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
I so move.
Second.
Nobody wants executive session. Call the roll, please.
Deckent,
Yes.
Inskeep,
Yes.
Dave Line,
Yes.
Soldner,
Yes.
Pyros de Carvalho.
Yes.
We're gonna break for
Yeah,
that.
look at that, oh.